This video will not have a happy ending. It's a video about inevitability, acceptance, and death. So if some of those things unease you, I completely understand if you don't want to continue. Now that that's out of the way, let's begin. In Isaac Asimov's monumental short story, The Last Question, humans are faced with a dilemma. They have been for trillions of years. The end of the universe as they know it keeps humanity up at night. The first time the titular last question was asked was the result of a $5 bet in the year 2061 by two tipsy computer scientists. A machine is made, one that can give us virtually unlimited energy from our host star. People are joyful. And while the celebrations are happening, two computer scientists along with their drinks go to a quiet area where they can talk. One named Adele, the other Lupov. The two men discuss this new technology. Adele says to Lupov, "Isn't it great we get to have unlimited energy forever?" And Lupov pessimistically informs Adele that it won't be forever, that the sun will die one day, and that everything will be gone because everything tends towards entropy. Entropy is the tendency for things to fall into disorder. In the story, they describe it as a tendency for everything to run down. The two men ponder this concept, until Lupov bets Adele $5 that he won't ask it that question. Ask who? Well, there's this computer, called the Automatic Computer, or AC. It's a large computer, and it answers questions based on its knowledge, like ChatGPT. So Adele gets up, drunk enough to entertain the idea, but sober enough to articulate the words required to inquire. And he does. He asks the question. The final question. Can we reverse entropy? With all the emotion of grey paint, the AC responds,
"Insufficient data for meaningful answer."
The two men sit in silence. Thanatophobia is the fear of death. It is the fear of the ultimate punishment, the ultimate consequence, the end-to-end all ends. People with thanatophobia fear death for themselves. They fear that one day they will cease to exist. Humanity has been coping with the concept of death for tens of thousands of years. Even in the concept of hell, we see a deep-rooted fear of death. The eternity of non-existence is so terrifying that eternal punishment is a preferable outcome to non-existence. Sisyphus hides his grin. The fear of eternity is called apeirophobia, and while not the same as thanatophobia, it's not hard to cite the similarities. A symptom of apeirophobia is the intense fear of death. It's the one thing nobody can talk their way out of, the thing nobody can fight their way out of, the thing nobody can outsmart, the thing nobody can trick. Death comes for us all. But something more harrowing, and indeed far more frightening, is death for the collective, death for everyone. One thing that gives us hope when we die is the idea that we will live on in the memory of others, in our children, in their children, the idea that our appearance in the world has made a difference to somebody. They say you die twice, the first time when your body becomes cold, and the second when someone says your name for the last time. What's devastating is when the second death happens first. The apocalypse in this way seems almost redundant. Who will appreciate the end of the world if one of the conditions of the end is that everybody dies? And that's what's so interesting about dead worlds. They're paradoxical. They contain no one, only the memories of what once was, not in the form of conscious beings, but buildings and art. The things people chose to involve themselves in, like one big abandoned building or a zombie. But what happens when you find yourself in a dead world? What happens when you exist in a place that dies and temporarily revives itself just to accommodate you? This is why I find the concept of the death of an entire world, an entire universe, so fascinating. To go to a place where time does not exist, where consequences are a mere construct of our imagination, where the sun rises for nobody. What happens after a world dies? Minecraft worlds live and die. Every Minecraft world, even single player, will die at some point over a long enough time span. If not completely gone, at the very least forgotten. Hundreds of thousands of Minecraft worlds from Minecraft's antiquity likely exist on old hard drives and SSDs, painted with the personality of the creators, preserved but forgotten. I think every older Minecraft player has worlds like these, even if they don't notice. With the constant re-release of Minecraft in different editions, it is more than likely that there are worlds on those older editions you've simply forgotten. But these are just individual Minecraft single-player worlds. What about multiplayer servers? Most servers that have been around since early Minecraft have either discontinued hosting or continue to impressively thrive even in the modern day. There are servers like Minecraft Online that have been around since 2009, and because of its strict no griefing policy, structures have been around since Minecraft's inception. But Minecraft Online doesn't exactly feel dead. It still gets a good amount of players, there's no risk involved because killing isn't allowed. If anything, it feels alive with the creative builds of several people. In terms of a server that is both old, feels dead, and has a history, I think only one falls into this category. That server is 2Builders2Tools, or 2B2T. For those unfamiliar, 2B2T is the oldest anarchy server in Minecraft. An anarchy server is defined as a server without rules. You can grief anyone, kill anyone, use hacked clients if you desire. The server has been running since 2010 and has had no resets since that date. As of writing, it's over 13.5 years old, which many joke is older than most modern Minecraft players. 2B2T is notorious for its spawn. The spawn is, well, gone. Large oceans from bedrock to build limit covers the spawn region. For thousands of blocks after that, the spawn is infected with lava casts, withers, and obsidian ceiling also shrouds the region in darkness. Along with all of that, people with hacked clients killing you along the way, with no real access to materials until you go thousands of blocks out. All of this has made 2B2T's spawn notoriously hard to escape. 3 years ago, I joined the server and tried and failed to leave the spawn region, after, I kid you not, 23 attempts, before I eventually just left. So why do I mention it? The server is teeming with life, no matter how toxic, but it's the spawn of 2B that seems to be the poster child of the entire server. Every 2B2T video by creators who don't play 2B specifically is about escaping spawn. In fact, many people question why people even consistently play on a server like this if they've already escaped spawn. Why wait in a multi-hour long queue? Why go through the effort of installing dodgy hacks? Why build anything knowing that in all likelihood it will be destroyed in the not so far future? Well, I feel like 2B2T shines in everything you don't see in the mass publications of the server. 2B2T has history. A lot of history. In fact, YouTubers like FitMC dedicate their large channels to 2B2T history. But these major events, battles, and incursions aren't why people play 2B2T. At least, it's not the reason I play. I don't play for the major. I play for the minute. I play for the insignificant. I play for the parts seldom seen. I play for the people, or lack thereof. You see, on 2B2T, there's a culture of road building. There are these major highways, made from obsidian so they can't easily be griefed, and built completely by players. But these aren't the roads I found myself on. No. I found myself on a place called the New Spawn Road, a parody of the Old Spawn Road built by the player Legit Yarick over a decade ago. Legit Yarick was once a player on the server in 2013. He detested hacked clients and was committed to not use coordinates. So to get from spawn to his base, he constructed the Old Spawn Road. This is all important, I promise. Yarick had a base called Castle Hearth. It was a marvel for all new players that came across it following the Old Spawn Road, especially after the hellhole that is spawn. Upon connecting to the New Spawn Road 40,000 blocks from spawn, I decided instead of continuing forward, I would go back to spawn on the road. This was because I wanted to see the ruins of Castle Hearth with my own eyes. So I began my journey. All of this was context to this adventure. This adventure to the ruins was, I kid you not, one of the most emotional, relaxing, and personal experiences I've ever had with a video game. I know it may sound ridiculous, but let me explain myself. Every other moment in a video game that has ever made me emotional, that has ever made me shed real tears, or was such a journey that I felt attached to the character I was playing as, was all great. But it was great because the developers had the intention of making it all of those things. The closest I can compare in my adventure to Castle Hearth was my experience getting to High Hrothgar in Skyrim. I went through marshes and snow and fought bandits and dungeons. I'd experienced the thieves' village of Riften and climbed the 7,000 steps to get to the great structure. The only thing though was that I hadn't exactly made this decision, at least not on my own. I went the route that made the most sense. The game wanted you to discover Riften and level up on the way and fight in dungeons. This was a scripted experience, in a scripted world with scripted encounters. But in 2B, I had formed my own journey. I decided to go to Castle Hearth, and this made the whole experience feel so enchanting. This isn't the sole reason the journey was so personal to me. In fact, it's not even close. The world of 2B is hostile. Lava casts everywhere, destroyed structures, people with hacked clients out for the blood of new players. It isn't as if this place was peaceful. In fact, it could be described as apocalyptic. Ironically, it was the most peace I ever felt playing Minecraft. I mounted a horse and I just began on the path. I had a lot on my plate in real life during the time, and after being busy for hours, coming back with the maybe hour of free time I had and just making my way down the road on my horse was peaceful. But this isn't about me. You may be wondering how this all relates. I found that the world of 2B2T and the places around the path were the most striking. 2B2T's map is a lot of things, but one thing I found in my travels seldom mentioned in the content based on the server was the profound loneliness of it all. And I know it's multiplayer, but only 200 people can be on 2B2T at any given time, and a lot of these people are bot accounts, or millions of blocks away in a base. Despite the player list looking like this, I had little to no interaction with anybody besides the couple of people that had killed me close to spawn. Once I had left spawn, I encountered no one. This didn't make sense. I was on a highway of all things. Shouldn't I find someone along the way? To chat with, share stories, share coordinates to ruin bases, trade with? No, I didn't see anyone at all. But I did see many ghosts. There is a tradition on 2B2T to leave signs in the places you've been, usually with a message, your username, and the date the sign was written. I saw a lot of these signs on the way. Some of them had funny messages that kept me going. Others were long, detailed accounts of the adventures of players. I found a sign containing the final words of a player before they succumbed to starvation. In a way, these signs felt like the ghosts of the players that had been there previously, still haunting the path. And I saw many of these ghosts along my travels, some of whom I even recognized. Captain KRB is one of the most underrated essayists on the platform, and they've made a video on 2B2T as well. They never mentioned the new spawn road, but they've certainly traveled it. I never saw KRB in game, but I've certainly seen their ghost, haunting the path with signs signifying their presence on the server, dated only a few months back. I'd often see the ghost of a player named Traduxa, someone who seems to have expanded the path over the years, and someone whom I get excited about every time I see a sign of theirs. In a way, it's sad, seeing these people I'll never meet. It's like a weird, almost parasocial relationship I have with the regulars I'd see along the way. Captain KRB and Traduxa aren't people I've met, but I feel like through the numerous remnants of their thoughts and ideas, I feel like I know them a little better. You can learn a lot just from the way someone writes. Their way of writing and their vocabulary could be indications of their age and maturity. You can pick apart the patterns of certain texts to give names to signs without credited authors. But of course, I don't know these people. I only know their phantoms. I know the things they chose to write down and document. I'd find signs dated a few days before my arrival and become frustrated. If only these people were more than apparitions. I want to meet someone. I want some confirmation that I don't walk this path alone. I want to meet someone through a medium that isn't temporary. I guess the question I was really asking myself this whole time was, why is this place so dead? No matter how unlikely, I hung on to the hope that one day, me and another traveler would meet, would log in at the same time and happen to cross paths. But it never happened. Only spirits and specters and my hallucinations. These people were known to me through their signs. It reflects our relationship with people throughout history. We have writings from Marco Polo and Ibn Battuta and their travels along the Silk Road, but they selected what they wrote. They selected what went into our imagining of their adventures and what didn't. It felt the same here. If only they left something unbiased, something tangible other than the wisdom in their text. Fortunately, in 2B2T we do have a version of this. Not the text people wrote down per se, but something more physical. People left themselves behind in the form of monuments and buildings. In a weird kind of way, buildings communicate even more about the people that built them than signs do about the people who wrote them. There's something about peeling behind the cracks of an old building and finding the person associated with it. During my journey, I was committed to not build anything or tunnel under during night. The nights are rough on 2B because they can't be skipped, and because the server is constantly on hard mode, the mobs are far more deadly and numerous. Which is why digging a tunnel and waiting it out was always preferable to risking going back to spawn. But again, I didn't want to. I wanted to stay in outposts made by players, the ruins of bases, stops along the highway, and there were no shortages of them. No shortages of signs at these places either. One night I spent in a snowy fortress a little off the path. Another, the blown-up basement of a wooden mansion filled with enough food to satiate my growing hunger. Another time, I found this structure with a bizarre pattern carved into the floor. Griefed, but still somewhat recognizable. The base felt almost like an organism, imprinted with the life of the creators. Exploring it felt like exploring the corpse of a giant. long dead, but with the occasional signs that it was once alive. Every time I entered one of these spots to stay the night, I always subconsciously expected someone to be there. That like the caravanserai that dot the Silk Road, I too would come across people to trade with, share ideas with, talk about the journey and our goals with. But it never happened. Every night, every numerous cold night, when everything was trying to kill me, comfort was found in the abandoned, in the blown up basements, in the castles and the corpses. I formed relationships with signs and buildings instead of people. That's how lonely it got on the path. That's how profoundly dead the world was. You see what I mean now? Unfortunately, the majority of these places got destroyed in griefs this close to spawn. When I finally made it to the ruins of Castle Hearth, I found it drenched in a sea of cobblestone caused by excessive lava casting. It was all blown to smithereens, all of it, not a single piece remaining. Or so I thought. Deep within the rubble of Hearth, I found something. A place untouched. First, I should probably define lava casting. I've been using it all this time. Lava casting is a tool used to destroy, but ironically, it can preserve. Lava casting is the process of using a bucket of water and a bucket of lava to fully cover an area in cobblestone. It can be done in a variety of ways, but the way I always learned was building a staircase, then placing down lava, and once that lava makes it all the way down, you place water and watch it all turn to stone. This is a pretty popular method for griefing on 2B, but as a consequence of completely covering an area in cobblestone, it can also help preserve a surprising amount. If a place had been lava cast before being blown up, then the stones can hold secrets. Digging deep enough into these lava casts can reveal entire intact parts of old bases that were griefed many years ago, and Castle Hearth was no exception. Deep within the ruins, whether the initial griefers meant it or not, lies the tower at the center of Hearth, still fully intact. Top to bottom, still standing as it had all those years ago. I can only imagine legit Yarick, the creator of the castle, walking up these stairs to view his complex, and years later, eventually so would I. But it wasn't so great anymore. As someone who befriended signs and walls throughout my adventures, seeing this historical site intact was the cherry on top of my mission, and it was fitting that I, for lack of a better term, got to know the place that made me start my journey in the first place. That even in a world as dead and barren as 2B2T's, a world where nothing survives, at least the imprints of the living can still be plastered onto the walls of the dead. The last question is asked again, a couple 100,000 years later, to a far more mature AC. The predecessors of humanity ask it the same question. This time, a parent trying to get their kid to shut up, and the same response is given. Billions of years later, when mankind has uploaded its immortal consciousness to a machine, and galaxies are all inhabited by creatures barely resembling Homo sapiens, one mind meets another, maybe billions of light years away, but so close they can communicate. Jokingly, one suggests asking the AC the final question once more. The AC, now one with the universe, not a physical thing per se, but everywhere, all-knowing, and made out of a material that isn't quite matter but isn't energy either. So they ask it, can entropy be reversed? The machine thinks for a bit, and answers the same cold mechanical response it has been giving for billions of years.
Insufficient data for meaningful answer.
They say goodbye, and don't talk again for eternity. When I tell people about one of my favorite video games of all time, they are somewhat confused. Admittedly, the way I describe it to them is confusing, but it's accurate. Outer Wilds is a game that is simultaneously the saddest, the happiest, the scariest, and the most blissful game I have ever played. I should mention here that this section contains major spoilers for the game, and the Outer Wilds community avoids mentioning spoilers like the plague. I get it though. The less you know about the game, the better. If you haven't played and are planning to, I highly encourage you to skip to this timecode to make it to the end of this section. I also won't be talking about the DLC either. Final warning? And we'll continue. I don't even know where to begin with this game. There are very few video games I would call a work of art. Few games that have impacted me as hard as Outer Wilds has. Just so we're on the same page, Outer Wilds is an open-world mystery game set in a time loop. You must uncover the mystery of your time loop based on the artifacts an ancient civilization known as the Nomai left behind. This is the basic premise of Outer Wilds. You go from planet to planet. The depths of Ember Twin, the seas of Giant's Deep, the black hole of Brittle Hollow. But as the game goes on, it becomes less about the time loop and more about the civilization that came before you. The story of the Nomai is one of tragedy, hope, and failure. The story of a dead civilization, the planets around the solar system haunted with their phantoms. It felt a lot like 2B2T, discovering new people through only what they wrote. Similarly to 2B, the signs the Nomai left behind were exceedingly personal. The picture painted by the Nomai text showed them as emotionally capable, conscious, human. Children deciding rules of a game that gives you a hint about one of the game's biggest obstacles. Love notes exchanged between flirting scientists. A Nomai in her shuttle, worried about the lives of her sister and friend. Every triumph the Nomai experienced, every experiment gone right or hopeful letter or funny joke was overshadowed by an inevitable death that they could not predict. There's something about reading history or reading a book written by a dead author, a melancholia that haunts bookshelves. The events described here have happened. The political uncertainty has been resolved. The problems seem trivial to us in the modern day. It's simply the knowledge that everyone being described and the people that wrote these are all dead. It's the same with listening to oldies music where none of the original artists are alive any longer. Or when you hear the fun fact that the laughter in most laugh tracks were recorded in the 50s, meaning most of the laughers you hear in sitcoms are dead, which may or may not be a myth. I recently watched the film 12 Angry Men, the 1957 version, but the thought never left my head. Everyone in this film is dead. It almost seems trivial, obvious even. It was a movie made nearly 70 years ago, featuring people well over the age of 35. Some of these people were born in the literal 1800s. Of course they would be dead by now. So when I see these personal, funny, romantic, and sad scrawlings on the walls of Nomai architecture, I get the feeling that, in a way, their world is gone, and we no longer have access to it. Just what they chose to write down, what they chose to document. And once again, much like 2B2T, the ghosts of the Nomai are how I got to know them. Outer Wilds is all about this. I could describe the game as it is, a puzzle game set in a dynamic solar system, but that isn't what it is. Truth be told, Outer Wilds is a game about death. About embracing death, and learning to live with the fact that everything comes to an end. Every 22 minutes or so, the sun goes supernova and the loop resets. You're dying all the time in Outer Wilds, but so is everything else. In Outer Wilds, you are constantly in a rush. In a rush to gather as much information as you can before the inevitable demise of your sun. But if you stop to smell the pine trees, you'll notice something. Something I hadn't noticed before. It isn't just your star going supernova. A lot of stars around you are exploding. It happens so often that you can expect to see many supernovae occurring at once. This isn't normal, at least not by the standards of our universe. But I hadn't noticed the stars dying because I was so focused on gathering information. One of the most powerful moments in Outer Wilds, at least for me, involved temporarily halting my search for information. I was very lost midway through the game and decided to follow the probe coming out of the launcher orbiting Giant's Deep in order to see where it went, hoping to make progress. I ended up somehow getting astronomically far away from the solar system, to the point where the sun looked like a little dot in space, and when I equipped my signal scope and pointed it at the little yellow dot, I was greeted with the melodies of my fellow astronauts all playing in unison. It was a beautiful moment, with a beautiful melody, but everything comes to an end. Eventually I saw the sun explode, and one by one, each of the instruments went out like a matchstick fire in a swift breeze, until I was alone, adrift in space, knowing all my friends were dead. And it was in that moment, out in the infinite cosmos, I looked around, and saw that my star wasn't alone. Thousands of worlds were dying all around me. Later in the game, you get to the derelict ship the Nomai originally arrived to the system on. You find that transmissions from other Nomai ships are still coming in. The story of how the Nomai clan that arrived on our solar system suddenly disappeared has passed into myth. The Nomai came to this galaxy in search of a signal older than the universe itself, called the Eye of the Universe, and never told anybody they were leaving in fear that the signal would vanish. The Nomai still inhabit the universe. It is in this wall of text that you confirm your suspicions. The various Nomai clans are grouping together in one star cluster to await the incoming death of the universe. The universe is dying. The world is ending. The entire goal of the game is getting to the Eye of the Universe, to attempt to save the universe, do something at least, whatever that thing may be. You get a small hint, I suppose. A living Nomai you found on the North Pole of the Quantum Moon wonders what would happen if a conscious observer entered the Eye. It's your last hope to save a dying world. So with this knowledge, you go to the center of Ash Twin. You rip out the warp core, powering it all, ending the loop. For the first time in the game, the consequences of death are serious. If you die, you won't just wake up back at home. If you die, the universe goes with you. Now you have the Noah's Ark of the universe in your hand, and the knowledge that one slip-up will end the universe forever. So you go to the vessel, making it past the anglerfish and dark bramble, and inputting the coordinates to the eye of the universe. And there you are, the eye of the universe. You look at the sun, seeing it explode for the last time, but this time, you don't wake up. Everyone is really dead this time. The stars seem the same way. The universe is nearly dark. You enter the eye. As you trek through the quantum weirdness of the eye, things disappear and reappear as they please. You fall into a pit. Just when you think it's over, you're back at the museum you began your journey in. The observation table now not only shows the solar system, but the entire universe. You observe it, only to see the final embers of the universe you once knew die. The universe no longer holds any secrets. The universe no longer is. You fall into a forest, similar to the one on your home planet of Timber Hearth. You see the multiple galaxies of the universe, one by one, slowly meeting the same fate as your sun, until the forest is dark. Then a signal comes into view. It's a tree, then a smaller tree, then a campfire. You light it, and a fellow astronaut, the one you heard whistling on the moon of Timber Hearth with your signal scope, Esker, is here. You find everyone, Rybeck the banjo player, Feldspar the harmonica user, Gabbro the trumpet, Chert the drummer, and finally, Solanum, the Nomai on the quantum moon, with her piano. You all gather around the campfire. They begin to play. Their music all in sync. Here we all were, playing around a campfire, alone at the edge of a universe, humming a tune. And through the smoke of the campfire, a new universe is born. And it was in this moment that it clicked for me. Outer Wilds is not a game about saving the universe. It's not a game where you are the hero, or where you can stop the inevitable. It's not a game about a stubborn time loop keeping you from dying. It's a game about accepting the inevitable. It's a game about accepting death. About accepting that the world you once called home died, and so did everything in it. And now, it's someone else's turn to live. And you have to physically accept that. You have to go to each one of your friends knowing that you will all be separated for the rest of time, and tell them you accept their fate, and your fate, and the fate of your home, and let a new story begin. This is the moment that made me shed a tear. I'm not even afraid to admit it. It's a game about the futility of challenging death, and the acceptance of one day no longer being around. Our universe will die, maybe not in our lifetimes, or the lifetime of any human that will ever exist, but it will happen. I am scared of the world ending. I'm scared of dying. I'm scared of eternity. But Outer Wilds taught me it's okay to be scared. It's okay to not accept it at first. It's okay to repeat the days like nothing will ever change. It's okay to be stubborn about the concept of mortality. But one day, you will die. The Earth will die. The universe will die. Outer Wilds has taught me to accept inevitability, accept eternity. I'm not all there yet, and I know many others aren't either. But when the final light in the universe goes dim, all we can do is accept. When the human race as we know it ends, maybe some stragglers will still be around. And if they are, I hope they watch the end. And instead of stubbornly attempting to prevent it, light a campfire, huddle around, and play a song. Play the final whispers of a dying universe. A few trillion years after the interaction between the immortal beings, humanity has become a hive mind. There is no individual. Every consciousness is blended into one amalgam. There is nobody in particular, only one somebody representing all of mankind. A shared consciousness simply called man. The end of the universe is upon us, and man desperately asks AC. An AC that is as far from the original creature as man is from a present-day human. Can entropy be reversed? A cry into the darkness. A hope that maybe things don't have to end, that maybe the world doesn't have to die. But the cold-hearted, paradoxically omniscient machine answers in the same mechanical way it has been for 10 trillion years.
Insufficient data for meaningful answer.
And the last of everything was dead. Until it wasn't. You see, the AC by this point has all data. It is all-knowing, not physical and omniscient, the same description you would give a god. And after a timeless amount of time, the machine ponders this last question, and compiles the infinite data stored within the regresses of its non-physical transistors. And this time, it comes up with a solution. A solution to the problem plaguing it for 10 trillion years. Let there be light, the machine says, and there was light. With the biblical illusion of the finality, it might surprise you that Asimov was an atheist. I bring up the story not because it's one of my favorite short stories of all time, though that is true. I bring it up because Asimov shows the concerns for a dying world is universal. By mere mortal humans, immortal creatures, and the highest life forms. Death for the collective being an incredible and inevitable curse for humanity and all that precedes it. It is the cruelest curse of them all. The knowledge that one day we will be non-existent, if that even is what happens when we die. But it doesn't have to be a curse. The existential angst of knowing death is inevitable strikes me every once in a while, but it's through forgotten, dead worlds I have learned to accept the inevitable a little more. Don't hang on to death, instead cling to life. Stop holding on to eternity. The first step to a life you want to live is accepting that it will all be over one day, whether for you or for the world. What happens after a world dies? Nothing. And that's okay. It's okay to be afraid, but the sooner you accept your fate, the sooner you will be content. I said in the beginning this video wouldn't have a happy ending, and I wasn't lying. This is a tough subject, and accepting it is even harder. These are the humble lessons of Dead Worlds, the final message they send out. Live like you only have one of these darn lives. There is no known way for humanity to continue living. There is no known way for the Earth to continue living. But while you're here, why not stop and smell the roses? I know the days can feel like an infinite loop of the same things over and over, but once you accept the messages of Worlds of the Dead, it might help you a little easier in the world of the living. If there's one thing you take from this video, just remember this. You can only die because you were lucky enough to live.